Xerxes has been sequestered into his hyperbaric oxygen chamber, so I am in charge of this recording for The Fabulous Wonder and the Secret of Life, the Universe, and Everything, a game for the Commodore 64 from 1983. We don't know the month, and I doubt anyone alive does, except maybe its developer, Alan G. Osborne. The game was nominated by @JinxTengu, and the actual game itself was published by Games Machine Ltd, who published about, 6 to 8 games that are all pretty much as good as Fabulous Wonder, which is why they're not around anymore. Would anyone like to kick off why Wonder is so fabulous?
Yes, please. Let me go ahead and start by summarizing it. You are some guy in a spaceship, just some generic human. You can put in your name, that's about all the customization you get. This alien shows up and tells you to do a thing for him. You can either keep playing the game, or you can say no and die. And that pretty much describes every choice in this game. What this alien wants you to do is go down this nearby planet and find this woman named Wanda, because she has the secret of life, the universe, and everything, and apparently Douglas Adams just does not care at all. So.
I was just going to say, a sidebar, that's a phrase that comes from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and was in fact the name of the third book of that series, which was published close around, I think, just before this game was released, but being a nerd for that series, that's really all I have to contribute, so continue, Bob.
I don't know if he was the kind of guy that would have sued over that kind of thing.
Probably not, I had to say.
I mean, even way back in 1983, references to Hitchhiker's Guide were just nerd things that nerds did. Yeah. That was not seen as inappropriate or old hat.
Well, he should have sued for how bad this game is, but I'm getting ahead of ourselves, so continue.
So the first thing you do once you get down this planet is you have to play this mini-game to get enough money to actually leave this office you're in. And this minigame is this really horribly slow kind of, basically you move the cursor left and right and try to avoid these bat heads, I guess they are, and pick up money. And it just takes forever because the screen just will not stop spawning bat heads, just en masse, just very rarely spawns the actual icons you have to pick up. And should you lose, you get kicked out of the planet and you basically die.
Basically anything in this game will end with and you die. Like, there's very little in this game that doesn't kill you at the end, which is often, if you're not a very good programmer, you'll just game over the player immediately after anything, because that way you don't have to worry about contingencies or keeping things in memory. It's very easy to just be, nope, start again. So once you manage to get through this minigame, which I know Bob managed to, you get to go to a bunch of different buildings, all of which kind of just kill you, except for one. No one wants to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Okay, so there's no documented proof of this game ever having been beaten. Am I correct?
If you go on Lemon 64, like, the game is written in BASIC, so you can just look right into its code. Oh. And according to the people who went and did that, there is no way to beat this game.
This game is literally unbeatable. That is correct, and that is why no one will ever finish it.
Anything you do will just eventually just lead to your death, which means either starting over or just getting kicked back to the prompt.
So this is just a troll game, but it's sold for actual money, correct?
It's sold for actual money with a fairly nice box art, quite pleasant looking box art with, I believe, the titular Wonder on the front.
Wow, what a racket! Like, that is total charlatan bullshit to the nines. I'm actually impressed. It's a scam almost. Like, who wants to buy a game that they can't actually beat?
Well, 1983 on the Commodore 64, you were not beating games. There were very few games that people would actually get to the end of.
I mean, Monty on the Run is technically impossible, but it has an ending. Even if you, like, cheat to get there, it has an ending. This...
From what I've seen from reading some people's opinions of this game, it wasn't... people who played this way back when it came out were like, yeah, I liked it. I had fun with it. It was it's an interesting, like, little thing. And I think that part of what made this interesting is it's actually a kind of cool setting. I realize that it's very, 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 very basic, but it is, you're in space, and then you go to space buildings and space bars, and there's a kind of inference that there's more going on than there is until you crack open the code and you're just like, oh, it's
well,
yeah,
I guess
there's nothing there.
I guess it technically beats Space Quest to the punch, so it has an advantage of time there. But
the thing is, I guess you can make a lot of excuses for this game and why it is, but I mean, Zork came out like 3 years commercially before this game. I mean, that has to count for something.
This game reminded me of, like, you know, when I was 13 years old and learning BASIC and a big fan of Douglas Adams, like, this would be something I would make to amuse myself. Maybe torture my parents and little brother with. But otherwise, like, under normal circumstances, would just, like, rot on a disc somewhere. But since all these companies were just, like, soliciting, not donations, but contract work from people, I'm sure this guy made this game for himself, found someone to sell it to, and they sold it. And that's, like, pretty much the whole story.
Yeah, like, you'd almost be certain, like, they would be, like, send us your game and we'll pay you £20. Like...
Yeah, I mean, as long as, like, they didn't, like, overheat your computer, like, they didn't care what they sold. It was something just that they could put on the shelves and people would pay money for, presumably.
Yeah, there were a lot less regulations for game production back then. It was almost the Wild
regulations?
West. Or, I guess, if there were even any, I don't know. I mean, that's what led to the Atari
basically
crash.
Douglas Adams fan game. And, I mean, this is not an obscure thing. I mean, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy game, which, what year did that come out? Did that come out before or after this?
Let me check.
I think it may have been after, if this is 83. But, I mean, that was no obscure thing. So it's pretty brazen. Like, it's not just the life in universe and everything. Like, there are tons of references to all sorts of stuff from the series. Like, there's like Zaphod something or other's name on the buildings you go into.
1984, if anyone's curious. So I guess there's some leeway there.
Yeah, so they actually beat the Hitchhiker's game out to the market.
And that was an extremely well-selling game.
Yeah, it was also an incredibly brutal one, but, it had structure. It followed the plot of the book almost to the letter, even if no one could probably beat it.
It was quite brutal because it was quite clever and required a lot of lateral thinking.
Exactly. But it was actually beatable. So,
So, yeah, Fabulous Wonder has a couple of things. It has a mini game or two. There's a card game. It's not blackjack. If it was, I'd actually be pretty impressed. It's a higher, lower gambling game. Not a lot else in there, to be honest. There's not even any sort of graphics of Wonder or any of the... you just get like a couple of blocks for buildings. You don't actually get any sort of characters presented on the screen in any way. Not even like little pixel blocks that like, that's a character. No, there's nothing.
Well, while it has just a very higher inkling of Yi graphics to it, this just basically is a text adventure except for the mini-gamey bits, right?
And it's simple text adventure, too.
It's really simple in every way. And our opinion is definitely that this was almost certainly someone was young, made programmed up something, because this guy released several games. A couple of his games are the exact same game, repackaged with a different graphic or two, so that's not quite sure about that. But clearly someone who was just learning to program and thought, hey, I like Hitchhiker's Guide, I'm going to slap something together. And then, for whatever reason, it ended up being sold on shelves. And that's the game we've gotten. And I think the fact that this game was written in BASIC was actually, might have been quite a positive to it, because some people that bought this, I think they cracked open the game and they made changes to some of the mini games and added little bits and pieces to it, which I think is quite helpful in that period of time for other people trying to learn to program. This is subtly a accidental aid in terms of making people interested in learning to code at the time.
I'm actually surprised that there was like actual art for this. Like, was this a British game or an American game?
I was pretty sure it was British. It was most common for products. A lot of them were British.
There's like, because the computer I had growing up, other than the Atari, which had games still on the shelves, but we also had an Apple II later on. And a lot of the games you would get from just hobbyists, you just get at a computer show where they just have rows and rows and rows of discs with X game on there. And that would, like, that was just hobbyist stuff. Like getting distribution from that was not terribly difficult. So I can imagine, just somebody doing that for fun. But to actually get it published is kind of impressive, I think, even though they were just picking up whatever they could.
Yeah, this one is a little odd. His other games, some of them approach actually being games, so I'm not quite sure if maybe they picked up his other games and he just gave them like all the games that he had, as some sort of deal. Maybe like, yeah, I made a couple arcade games and stuff, and here's Fabulous Wonder as well. And they're like, cool, we'll publish it all. We don't care. It's a little hard to find the story of this. I think only Alan G. Osborne himself would be able to tell you what was going on.
We gotta track this guy down.
If anyone knows Alan G. Osborne, because I tried to find him, but you can't really because it's a fairly common name, so it's quite difficult to find the Alan G. Osborne who produced these games. And we actually streamed all the games that he made, including Condor, which has
it's our Condor.
Right? Yes, our Condor. What a great. Got great box art of like a man chasing a condor around.
Everything else he made is just this very simplistic arcade game, which are fun for about 5 minutes, but Wanda is
more fun than you'll ever get at Fabulous Wonder.
I gotta rank this, and I gotta level with you. I think we might have a new bottom here, like below X-Men.
Yeah,
wow.
It's definitely a low-scoring game.
Like, X-Men has a point. Caverns of Kafka has an ending. This is just kind of pointless and kind of...
Hey, Caverns of Kafka, I would, that tried a hell of a lot. I don't care if it didn't work all the way around, it was trying. This game doesn't even feel like it's trying. There's an item in this game that you can get that lets you basically... If you lose, you can reset to a slightly further previous part of the game. And that's all the item does. And it costs you a significant amount of money to buy it. Money that you could use to spend on not finishing the game. So it's crazy that this thing is just so... It's like he just fell asleep. He's like cramming it like he promised them like a copy of Fabulous Wonder. And then... It was the night before, and he's like, crap, I gotta finish this game, I'm just gonna finish. And that's it, and they ran with whatever code was on the disc that arrived on them. So
I'm going to pitch a sort of hot, loaded question here. Is the Fabulous Wanda even a game?
Well, I mean, it's not a good one.
Other than being finishable.
It does have mini games. I mean, that would have to qualify it.
Oh,
you can interact with it, so...
Alright, so I guess it ranks above Crazy Bus at least, but that's
barely.
It's special thing. I won't necessarily complain about throwing this one down to the very bottom. I guess we should kind of make a fair case. I mean, Bob already did kind of lay things out, but I remember I wanted to push for Super Monkey Godaiboken to be worse than X-Men several episodes ago, and yet that somehow rated higher, so... Like, is Wanda just so bad that it's kind of amusing, or is it just, like, flatly just a total waste of time, or...
The problem with Wanda is it doesn't have enough non-substance to actually find enjoyable. Because, Super Monkey Godaiboken, for as bad as it is, it's got lots of stuff going on. It's quite a long game. It actually takes like 30 minutes or an hour to get through if you know vaguely what you're doing. There's graphics, there's battle systems, there's some like the game's map is actually a map of China. It has all these things that someone at some point cared. They thought, we're actually publishing a game, so let's try and make a game. Whereas Wonder is probably a programming student or a young programmer who's just, I like Hitchhiker's Guide, and
yeah,
and then that was published.
The thing is, there's like some type-in program that got tossed around like a BBS or some such back then that might have been forgivable, but this is a game that you buy off the shelf with your money, and that makes it a lot harder to forgive. It's really the
paying for it that I think makes this game bad.
That's a good point, yeah. That's kind of why I was leaning towards when I was thinking. I mean, it was sold for money when it really shouldn't have been. I mean, I gotta say, if this were like a shareware demo of what could have been a much larger and more thoughtful game, then, yeah, I'd certainly go for it. But it's like, no, this is basically nothing. It was pretty much nothing back then, and it's less than nothing nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, back then, this is in a totally different caliber than, like, almost anything on this list. Like, it's just somebody screwing around, more or less, versus, like, X-Men, which is a terribly done game. Like, this doesn't have any real ambitions to it, which is fine. I mean, a lot of the games back then didn't really. It was just, like, something goofy somebody did to amuse themselves.
What I think is about X-Men is a really, really, really poorly put together product. At some point, someone was like, we're going to make this and sell it. And that Wanda doesn't have that element. It doesn't have the people should be able to finish my game. There's it's not that like Wonder has an ending that was accidentally disconnected somehow in the code. Like it was just like there was a typo or something that it didn't execute properly, or he went in and changed a number and it broke the game. No, it just doesn't exist. That you get the game is just like there's nothing. You can't get the secret to the life. There's nothing there. You meet Wonder and then she says get out, and then you lose the game, and that's it. Like that's, I mean, maybe it's a joke. Like it could be a huge meta joke in that regard, because the game does have a line. It does say that the last person to find out the meaning of the life from Wonder died or their head exploded or something. So maybe it's a huge meta joke that you can't learn the meaning of life from the game. But you had to pay for the privilege of getting that meta joke, and the rest of the game doesn't kind of make up for that. So,
does anybody know what this game actually retailed for? Because we're talking about how like this costs money, but was it like a lot? Was it like a $5 like?
I'm pretty sure it was a discount title. I don't believe it was a full price one.
Well, however much, it was still paying.
It's still too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, here's a quick question. Does anyone have an idea if there were like any magazine reviews of this game at the time?
Oh, crap! I should have done my research on that.
I think there was at least one that did not score it very favorably. While we wait, I can give you the German title. Die Schafwunder und das Geschehnis des Lebens uns.
So the game was translated into another language?
Yeah, apparently it was available in German.
Yeah, balls. I can't.
I'm not seeing any magazine reviews.
Yeah,
so.
This is something where I think a Guru Larry would be able to help us out. But yeah, maybe we'll ask him if we interact with him soon. But well, as far as us ranking this game,
look, no one's gonna say this game is good. No one's gonna bump this game high.
I'm not going to speak for. I'm not going to put a cherry on a giant turd sundae. This is just. Yeah.
What I know is you can buy this game online kind of at the moment for I think like £5 or whatever,
Is it on eBay? Can I buy it right now?
It was on a website that I was just sort of scrolling around, like a retro game site. It was like, yeah, you can buy it, whatever.
Huh.
But no, you could buy it. You could find this game online if you really wanted to buy it for some reason. I wouldn't, but you could. And so yeah, it's not like this is a. It's definitely well sold for money.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like £4, and then shipped it's going to be like £10. I could have this on my shelf next to Psycho Soldier.
Kurt, do you really want to, though? Do you really want to?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it, so it's now part of gaming history.
Yeah, but so, all right, look, we've gotten way off track. I don't know what our edit is going to do except strangle us here. But
I would say this game is probably the worst. At the same time, I feel bad saying it that way because, just barring the fact that it was commercially done, like, you could look at any other, like, magazine type-in program at the time, and it wouldn't be much better. And I would feel, like, bad saying that, this is an objectively terrible game. Well, it's just something some guy did like cheaply, even if it was released commercially, versus again Super Monkey Daiboken, which people worked on and is like just awful. But at the same time, like I would definitely not want to play this ever.
It's a gaming artifact, and I think we've said, like, you know, putting something at the very bottom of the list is also a sort of interesting indictment of a title. Like, why is it at the bottom? how do you end up at the bottom of a list of games? And I wouldn't put Wanda any higher. I would put it at the bottom, and I think it's mostly because I think X-Men, you could play that game and probably get some fun out of it if you rented it on a weekend. I think whatever money you would put into Wanda would probably not feel satisfactory. You'd have been better off at the time going to the arcade with your £4 or £5 or whatever, I don't know, like £2, it doesn't matter, and playing arcade games for like the 30 minutes or whatever you would have gotten out of it. And that's really the main selling point here, is like, this game is a game that you're actively worse off for having owned at the time.
Or you could have copied that floppy, so...
I feel that might have been why this game got a reputation, is probably people just swapped it around. I don't think that many people bought it.
Yeah, no, that sounds accurate. Yeah, so worst game ever until further notice.
I look forward to seeing a game that is worse than this one.
Me too.
No.
Me too.
Now everyone's gonna try to
open the floodgates. Oh, jeez.